Welcome to the deep dive. Today is Monday, March 23, 2026. And if you are listening to this right now, I know you're here because you want to cut through the noise.
Right, there's just so much noise right now.
There really is. You want to bypass all that information overload and get straight to those aha moments that actually help you navigate your daily life.
Which is exactly what we're aiming for today.
Exactly. And usually when we talk about power or like leadership in our lives, there's this built-in expectation of volume.
Oh, good
It's
thought.
almost treated like a law of physics, right? Like the loudest voice in the room, the person taking up the most physical space.
The one who never shows a single moment of doubt.
Yes, that person is the leader.
It's just highly visible. I mean,
Yeah.
we're culturally conditioned to believe that absolute certainty and noise are the exact same thing as authority. We reward the spectacle.
We do. It's a total sledgehammer approach to reality. Like if there's a problem, you just hit it harder.
Right, just swing away.
But what happens when that sledgehammer stops working? What happens when the loud, shiny systems we've built our entire lives around, whether that's a corporate structure or a narrative about our career, or even just the stories we tell ourselves to get out of bed in the morning?
When they suddenly start to fracture.
Exactly, when they fracture. That is the question on the desk between us today. We have two incredibly unique, deeply intertwined sources that map out a massive impending shift in how we define truth and power.
And we are definitely stepping away from the standard white papers and data sets for this one.
Oh, for sure. So the first source is a weekly astrological forecast for this exact week, March 23rd through the 29th, 2026. It's from Tarot by IFC.
Okay.
And the second is its companion piece, which is this really cool sci-fi parable called a StoryScope. It's titled When Illusions Lost Their Gravity.
Such a great title.
It really is. And our mission today is to synthesize these two texts. The reason we're looking at both is that they do something kind of magical when you put them together.
Yeah, they complement each other perfectly.
Right, because when the astrology forecast tells us about planetary alignments, it's basically giving us geometry and math.
The raw architecture.
Exactly. But the sci-fi parable acts as like an emotional simulator. It takes that math and shows us exactly what it feels like inside a human nervous system.
I love that. The astrological forecast provides the architecture of how our psychological landscape is shifting. And the parable gives us this brilliant narrative lens to feel what that shift looks like on the ground, in real time.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Right.
because the core theme of this week, according to the forecast, is that the energy right now is honest, it is raw, and it is surprisingly uncompromising.
Highly uncompromising.
Yeah. We're living in a moment where fantasy, projection, and straight-up propaganda are dressing up in very nice suits and trying to pass as fact.
Which is exhausting.
Right. But the central promise of our sources is that truth is arriving anyway.
Which propels us to the most urgent question of this entire deep dive, really. What actually happens to a society, or to you as an individual listener, when the illusions you've relied on finally start to dissolve?
Well, according to the astrology, this dissolving of illusion isn't just random. It's being triggered by a specific major alignment happening right now. Like specifically March 22nd through the 25th.
Right.
Yeah, the sun is conjuncting both Neptune and Saturn, and the forecast literally calls this a generational turning point.
Which sounds intense.
It does sound intense, and I want to make sure we aren't just throwing jargon around. When the source says these planets are conjuncting, what is the actual mechanism there? What does that actually mean for the listener?
Well, so when astrologers say planets are conjuncting, they mean those planetary bodies are occupying the exact same degree in the sky from our vantage point.
Okay.
Their energies are forcefully merged. Like they cannot operate independently at all. They have to synthesize.
So they're basically sharing the exact same room.
Precisely. Now think about what is actually in that room right now. The sun represents visibility, identity, the spotlight.
Okay.
Saturn traditionally represents concrete reality, structural integrity, hard boundaries. And Neptune represents the fog-like, dreams, illusions, the unseen,
Oh, wow.
right? So when the sun, this great spotlight, forcefully merges with both reality and illusion at the exact same time, it's like turning on the stadium lights in the middle of a magic trick.
Oh, that is such a good way to put it. The smoke and mirrors are instantly exposed.
Exactly. The invisible wires holding the magician up are suddenly catching the glare of the spotlight. Reality checks start arriving in waves.
Because you can't unsee the wires.
You really can't. Illusions dissolve on a mass scale because you suddenly see where denial or, wishful thinking, has been standing in for actual load-bearing truth.
And the StoryScope parable visualizes this mechanism so beautifully. It sets the scene in these incredible floating districts suspended high above an old
Oh,
ocean.
yes, the floating cities.
Yeah. The cities are literally held up by what the story calls gravity anchors. But the brilliant part is how these anchors work. They aren't just mechanical engines.
No, there's something much more fragile.
Right. They run on projection. They are powered by the collective belief of the citizens. Entire governments, social hierarchies, histories, they're all just lacquered until they shine. And as long as everyone agrees to believe in the shine, the city stays in the air.
It's a profound metaphor for modern society,
No.
honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we are suspended by invisible anchors of mutual belief all the time.
Yeah.
Think about currency or corporate hierarchies or even just the unwritten rules of polite society.
Totally.
They only have gravity because we all collectively agree to project reality onto them.
Right. But in the parable, this character named Lena starts noticing that the sky itself is beginning to tell the truth. Like, the air stops pretending.
Which is terrifying for them.
Yeah, because when collective belief wavers even a little bit, the city physically drops a few inches. The illusion is literally losing its gravity. Lena is standing in this transit corridor, and she catches two reflections of herself in the glass. One that looks certain, and one that looks like it's been waiting a very long time to be acknowledged.
Such a powerful image.
And there's this fantastic quote from an archivist character in this story named Old Marrow. He says, "Fantasy's walking around in a good coat this week, passing itself off as truth, but truth's coming too. Always does."
What is so crucial about how the source text defines this moment of truth arriving is the distinction it makes about the fallout.
Okay, tell me more about that.
The forecast is very careful to state that this disruption is a correction, not a collapse.
A correction, not a collapse. Okay.
Right, because a collapse implies the fatal end of a system. A correction implies that a system has drifted so far from reality that it's being, well, violently forced back into alignment.
I want to throw an analogy at this because conceptualizing a generational correction sounds super overwhelming.
It really does.
And I'm trying to figure out how this actually feels in your daily life. Is this astrological correction sort of like a forced software update on your phone?
Oh, I like where this is going.
Like, you know, when you're right in the middle of sending an important email or you're navigating somewhere and the phone just shuts down to install an update?
And you just stare at the little progress bar, totally helpless.
Exactly. It temporarily bricks the device. It causes absolute mental chaos and fatigue in the short term. But ultimately, that exact disruption is required to patch security flaws and make the system run efficiently going forward.
What's fascinating here is that the software update analogy works perfectly because it highlights the concept of required downtime.
Right.
When your reality is temporarily bricked, you experience deep disorientation. The forecast explicitly warns about this crisis of faith. What you once believed in might appear to be disintegrating.
Which is scary.
It is, but that update is patching the structural flaws. This correction creates an uncompromising checkpoint. It actively tests leaders and examines the commitments you've made.
So it's testing the foundation.
Exactly. If you've built your career or your relationship on a weak foundation, on an illusion, it's going to show visible strain right now. But strong foundations will demonstrate incredible resilience.
Okay, so we have this massive disruption. The stadium lights are on, the magic trick is exposed, and the software is updating.
Right.
Once the initial shock of that reality check settles, the architecture of the week shifts toward the mechanics of what comes next. Like, who steers the ship?
And that brings us to Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday's alignments. The astrology maps this transition through a different alignment. The sun forming a sextile with Pluto.
Right, and a sextile is a completely different geometric animal than a conjunction.
How so?
Well, a sextile is a 60-degree angle between planets. It creates a highly cooperative, harmonizing flow of energy.
Okay.
But unlike a conjunction, which sort of forces an event on you, a sextile represents an opportunity. It opens a door, but you have to actively choose to walk through it.
And in this case, the door being opened is connected to Pluto, which deals with underlying power, the hidden mechanics of the world, and transformation.
Exactly. So when the sun's visibility harmonizes with Pluto's raw power, responsibility is being handed to you. But again, it requires you to actively step up and take it.
But the definition of leadership, the definition of power itself is completely changing here. We aren't just picking up the sledgehammer again.
No, the sledgehammer is gone.
Right. Because in the StoryScope, as the illusions thin out and the city drops a few inches, the city's signal towers start malfunctioning.
I love this part.
They start leaking old, polite secrets. They broadcast the quiet, often ruthless decisions made in sealed rooms that kept the city afloat.
All the hidden truths coming out.
Yeah. And Lena, our protagonist, listens to this and realizes she has never actually wanted leadership because in her tall, floating world, power always meant standing where the wind hits the hardest.
Making the brunt of it.
Exactly. It meant shielding everyone else and suffering as a badge of honor. But then, as the system corrects, someone asks her a very different question. They ask, where should the pressure go?
And that is the pivot. Where should the pressure go? It entirely redefines power.
It really does.
Power is no longer about dominating a room or making the most noise or being a martyr who takes all the wind. It's about understanding the structural mechanics of a situation and knowing exactly where pressure needs to be applied and where it needs to be released.
I really want to challenge our modern obsession with loud leadership here. We talked about the sledgehammer approach earlier.
Right.
If we pivot away from that, are we talking about moving to, like, an acupuncture approach to power?
Oh, an acupuncture approach.
Yeah, where true influence isn't about hitting a system as hard as you can, but simply knowing the exact millimeter-specific nerve to press to release tension or cause a massive systemic shift.
An acupuncture approach is exactly what a sextile demands. It requires precision over force.
Precision over force.
Yes. Think about your own workplace or family dynamics, This week, you might suddenly see how the underlying structures actually operate. You might realize that an entire department is bottlenecked, not because of a lack of effort, but because of one tiny, misaligned process.
Wow. Yeah.
The forecast notes that this Sun-Pluto energy is sparkling with strategic awareness. Someone might casually ask for your opinion in a meeting, and instead of giving a loud, performative speech, you just point to the one process that needs to change.
And that's it.
In that moment, you realize you have profound influence.
Because you know where the needle goes. You don't need the sledgehammer to fix the machine.
The quiet application of profound understanding, it is incredibly potent.
But wielding this new acupuncture leadership externally requires something kind of terrifying. You have to confront your internal vulnerabilities first.
Yes. The internal work.
Yeah, you cannot fix a broken system if your own foundation is built on avoidance. The astrology sources map this internal confrontation to a Thursday alignment between Venus and Chiron.
And to understand the gravity of this, we really need to look at what Chiron represents.
Please do, yeah.
In astrology, Chiron is a comet or asteroid known as the wounded healer. It points to our deepest insecurities, our historical traumas, and the tender spots we spend our lives trying to protect.
Okay.
Venus represents our values, our relationships, and our inherent self-worth. So when Venus and Chiron meet, a spotlight is placed directly on an emotional bruise.
Oh, an emotional bruise. The StoryScope refers to this specific energy as the softer trouble. It stirs up old wounds like dust caught in a sunbeam.
Such evocative language.
It's beautiful but painful. There's a pivotal scene where a ruling coalition, this group that has run the orbital cities for a century using sheer force and loud power, broadcasts a message trying to sound certain to calm the public.
But it doesn't work.
No. Their certainty cracks. You can actually hear the panic underneath. And a mechanic character named Isha watches this broadcast and says, they never listened to the quieter voices, the ones that carried care instead of force. Yeah. The sources specifically highlight themes around how archetypal feminine qualities like care, intuition, empathy, collaboration have been historically discounted. The world has labeled those quieter voices as weak or inconvenient for a very long time, prioritizing the loud, masculine sledgehammer instead.
And that historical discounting leaves a mark. It leaves a bruise.
Yeah.
When this alignment hits, the instinct, of course, is to flinch. When an emotional bruise regarding your worth or your fear of rejection is pressed, the immediate temptation is to retreat, to shut down.
To put the armor back on.
Exactly. To project an illusion of invulnerability to protect yourself. But the explicit directive of the forecast here is to choose courage, to show up authentically and approach the moment with honesty, even when you feel terribly exposed.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I wrestled with this when reading the source material.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's talk about the reality of the listener's life right now. In a highly competitive professional setting, or even in a complex family dynamic, doesn't exposing a wound or speaking forthrightly about a vulnerability feel inherently dangerous.
It does. It feels very dangerous.
Like, we are taught from day one to project invulnerability. Why on earth should you risk vulnerability when retreating, playing it safe, and keeping your armor on feels so much smarter?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at what maintaining that armor actually costs you.
Okay.
The forecast is brutally honest here. The process of exposing a wound is never comfortable. It goes against all our survival instincts.
Right.
But it's fundamentally necessary for the software update to complete. It's only in the clear, spoken awareness of wrongdoing or the full acknowledgement of a tender spot that we gain the ability to intentionally make new choices.
Wow.
As the parable notes, when a bruise is seen clearly enough, it begins to heal differently. If you retreat and hide the vulnerability, you're just keeping the sledgehammer mentality alive internally.
You're perpetuating the exact illusion the universe is trying to dissolve.
Precisely. You cannot implement sustainable outward change. You cannot practice acupuncture leadership if your internal foundation is still actively pouring concrete over an unacknowledged wound.
That is war.
You have to clear the cache so the update can actually finish installing.
That makes total sense. Acknowledging the internal vulnerability is the prerequisite for building the external architecture.
Exactly.
Which perfectly sets up the blueprint for the end of the week. Because once the air clears, we move to a massive astrological event on Saturday, Saturn forming a sextile with Pluto.
And this is a foundational shift. The source emphasizes that this is the first time these two specific planetary energies, Saturn's concrete reality and Pluto's transformative power, have connected in this cooperative sextile angle since 2020.
Yes, 2020, a year nobody associates with massive systemic disruption.
Right. Like you say 2020 and everyone just flinches.
Seriously.
But what this alignment requires is facing a very hard truth. We are not as far along as we thought we were.
Okay.
The shiny illusions of progress have dissolved. Now comes the requirement for long-term dedication. It requires a blend of deep discipline, strategic influence, and a genuine commitment to social and structural change.
And in the StoryScope, this energy is described as the moment strategy finally replaces spectacle.
I love that phrase. Strategy replaces spectacle.
It's so good. People stop trying to impress each other with loud noises and start mapping out where change can actually last. Our archivist, Old Marrow, does something brilliant here. He taps a glowing crystal map of the city, which shows every energy line, every gravity anchor, every decision node. And he says, loud power breaks fast. Effective power listens first. And then he points at the map and tells Lena, see where the real doors are. Most people spend their lives knocking on walls.
Most people spend their lives knocking on walls. That right there is the defining image of this deep dive.
It really is. I really want to dig into the human psychology of that, though, because it's easy to read that quote and assume we just can't see the doors. But I would argue that sometimes we actually like knocking on walls.
Wait, really? Why would we like that?
Because knocking on a thick brick wall is incredibly loud. It hurts your knuckles. It creates a ton of noise and visible sweat. And in our current hustle culture, that noise acts as performative proof to our boss, to our family, to ourselves, that we are working incredibly hard.
Oh, wow.
If our knuckles are bleeding, we must be dedicated. It is performative effort instead of effective effort. We are choosing the friction of the wall because opening a door is quiet, and quiet feels like we aren't doing enough.
That is a phenomenal distinction to make.
Yep.
Performative effort versus effective effort.
Right.
We have completely conflated exhaustion with impact.
Yeah.
But Saturn sextile Pluto does not care about your performative exhaustion. It does not reward dramatic gestures or bruised knuckles. It rewards strategy. It asks you to look at your personal mission statement and align your actions with actual sustainable changes. It's about reclaiming your inner authority by drawing upon strengths you didn't even know you had, precisely because you stopped wasting your energy trying to punch through a brick wall just to prove a point.
You conserve your energy to simply turn the handle on the door.
Yes. Finding the door requires the vulnerability we just talked about. It requires pausing, assessing the structure, and admitting that your previous sledgehammer strategy wasn't working.
So what does this all mean? How do we wrap up this intense week of shifting realities, exposed bruises, and finding doors?
Well, the forecast tells us that the energy at the end of the week, moving into Sunday, is all about cleaning up.
Okay.
It calls it organizing the lessons.
Organizing the lessons.
Yeah.
And the StoryScope describes the city experiencing a useful kind of tired.
A useful kind of tired, yes.
It's the kind of tired you feel after truth has walked through every single room of your house, ripped down the wallpaper, and rearranged all the furniture. It is exhausting, but everything finally fits.
It's the deep stillness that follows a paradigm shift. Plans begin to form with patience instead of spectacle.
Yeah. In the final moments of the parable, Lena stands on a high platform looking out at the earth below. The gravity anchors have stabilized at a lower, more honest altitude.
No more illusions holding them up artificially.
Exactly. The illusion fields that used to soften the sky and make everything look shiny have thinned out entirely. And for the first time, she can actually see the steady, indifferent stars.
It's such a grounded ending.
It is. And in that moment, she realizes a small truth that carries massive weight. Leadership is not being the shining figure at the center of the room. Leadership is being the person willing to stay when the room changes.
Yeah.
It is being the person willing to learn how the new mechanics work and placing your effort only where it matters most.
The story makes a point to say that this new reality isn't perfect.
Right.
It is raw, but it is capable. And a capable reality is infinitely more powerful and far more sustainable than a flawless fantasy.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. We've gone from the sledgehammer to the acupuncture needle, from the shiny illusion to the steady stars. But before we leave you to navigate this generational turning point in your own software updates, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Right. Based on everything we've unpacked today about strategy replacing spectacle and effective power listening first.
If true, effective power is really about finding the real doors instead of just making noise. What is the wall in your own life that you are hitting right now purely out of habit? What performative effort is exhausting you just to prove you're working hard? And what would happen if today you simply stop knocking, step back, and look for the handle?